P. Hi everyone, we are from group 6 that consists of Aulia Anastasia, Gracia Angelia Borsiotang, Vianita, Farel Semanjorang, Muhammad Refli Batubara, and Sawita Dulia Satyawan. Today we would like to explain about semiotic theory by Roland Barthes. Next, please. Semiotics of Roland Barthes. A. Denotation and connotation. Barthes put forward his theory of connotative meaning. He argues that connotation is used to explain one of the three ways in which signs work in the second order of signs. The connotation describes the interaction that takes place when the sign meets the feelings or emotions of the user and their cultural values. This occurs when meaning moves toward subjective or at least intersubjective. All of this take place when the interpreter is influenced equally by the interpreter and the object of our sign. For Barthes, the important factor in connotation is the signifier in the first order. The first order makers are denotative signs. Through verbal and visual elements, two levels of meaning are obtained, namely the denotative meaning contained in the first level of semiosis and the connotative meaning obtained from the next level of semiosis. The semiotic approach lies at the signified level, so the message can be understood as a whole. The study of connotation forms the core of contemporary semiotics. This is because most of the meanings that signs have in a cultural setting are connotative meanings. Clearly, do denotative meanings arise in the interpretation of the signs in the cultural settings. In a fundamental sense, culture can be classified as a very broad system of connotative meaning relating to associative macrocodes that enable members of a culture to interact purposefully and to represent and think about the world in particular ways. Barthes argues that we can talk about two systems of meaning, denotation and connotation. Denotation is the level of descriptive and literal meaning that virtually all members of a culture have. So, Bevis meaning means denotatively the concept of a useful and pink farm animal with a muzzle and a tail, and so on. While connotation is meaning constructed by signifiers that relate to broader cultural aspects of beliefs, attitudes, frameworks, and ideologies of a social construct. Meaning becomes a matter of sign association with other cultural codes of meaning. So we can connotate a bad police officer or a male Calvinist, according to the subcode or lexicon used. Next, the next will be explained by Vianita.
When the connotation is neutralized as something hegemonic, that is when it is accepted as normal and natural. It acts as a map of the conceptual meanings by which one makes sense of the world. It's all a myth. Even though myth is a cultural construction, it can appear as a universal truth that has existed before and is attached to common sense. Myth then is similar to the concept of ideology, which he said works at the connotation level. Drew, Volosinov in 1973 argued that the realm of ideology is related to the arena of science, where, where there is a sign, there is an ideology, said Barker in 2006. For Barthes, myth is a second-order semiotical system or meta-language. Myth is a second language that speaks of a first-level language. Sign in the first system, signified and signified, that construct denotative meanings become a markers in the second order of connotative mythological. Rather than having denotative meaning, the sign is said by Barthes' recent work to be polysemic, that is, it carries many potential meanings. As a result, the text can be interpreted in various ways. Meaning requires the active involvement of readers and the cultural competence they present in the text image in order to temporarily determine meaning of the particular purpose. Thus, the interpretation of the text depends on the setting and the culture of the readers with the observation and social codes. These are all distributed differently across class, gender, and nationality, and etc. If we use Barthes' theoretical framework to understand culture, then we can understand culture from two systems of meaning, denotation and connotation. Denotation is the level of the descriptive meaning and literature that belong to virtually all members of a culture. For example, the word rat means rodent. However, at the connotative level, meaning is constructed by markers associated with the social cultural aspect. Thus, meaning become a sign associated problem with another culture code of meaning. Rats can mean corruptor who break into state money, can can mean people who have many children, and so on. Semiotic of Roland Barthes, second point is myth. According to the Barthes, everything that is fixed, established, stable is a myth. Myth is a meaning frozen by power. When humans interpret something according to the official meaning that seems to be scientifically inherent in science, then he has sunk into myth, said Takwin in 2009.
Thank you, Fianita. The next will be explained by Aulia. Aulia, take your time.
Every day, humans always interpret things subjectively. A piece of battle, for example, is often used to replace a woman who has been taken away by her boyfriend. Her family can replace the woman by sending the battle leaf as a replacement. In the past, this often happened to one of the ethnic group in North Sumatra, namely the Karo ethnicity. If the replacement for the woman is not delivered to the woman family, it is believed that their marriage will not last long. Therefore, the connotative meaning of all belief in a tradition becomes a myth in that tradition. Myth, according to Barthes, is different from the meaning of myth that we have known so far, a story about goods that are believed by the supporting community. Her Barthes presents myths as a type of speech. What is meant by speech here is that which contains a message. Myths can be anything, not only various type of writing, but also picture, photograph, films, advertisements, fashion show, and so on. All of this can support the myth. Myth cannot be determined by its object or material because every material can contain meaning. A role plays as a challenge is also myth from the outset. It must be clear that myth is a system of communication. Myth convey message. This causes us to determine that myth is not an object, a concept, or an idea. Myth is a way to interpret a from. Barthes used the development of Saussure side theory, marker and signified as a time to explain how we live in society dominant by connotation. Connotation is the development of the signified aspect, meaning or content of a site, by the site user according to his point of view. If the connotation has dominant society, it will become a myth.
Thank you. The next will be explained by Refri. Refri, take your time.
Okay. Barthes tries to describe how everyday events in our culture have become natural, even though this is just a myth due to the connotation that have become established in society. Wrestling is an engineer's sport. However, the audience doesn't quite question it. What is important is how the behavior and appearance of the wrestlers, or markers in the spectator's cognition, are given meaning or signal according to what the audience wants the favorite to win. This is the connotation, namely the extension of the marker by the user of the sign in culture according to Ho 2008. Barthes is a descendant of structuralism, seeing the meaning of signs dynamically. Barthes develops into a theory of connotation that are owned by certain cultural communities, not individually. He criticizes his society by saying that everything that is considered normal in culture is actually a process of connotation. If the connotation becomes fixed, it becomes a myth, whereas if a myth becomes stable, it becomes an ideology. The pressure of Barthes' sign theory is on connotation and myth. He said that in a culture there is always ideological abuse that dominates the minds of members of society. By writing a collection of essays entitled Mythologies, 1957, he wanted to free his society from his ideological abuse by understanding why various meanings that seem to have been accepted in society could, could occur. Barthes' a text is not a line of words that produces a theological single meaning or message or revelation of God's author, but a multidimensional space in which there are various kinds of writings, none of which are original, mixed, and overlapping. The text is a network of quotations taken from countless cultural centers. For Barthes, a text is a combination of writings taken from various cultures and enters a certain space, in which all of them are centered and interact in the form of dialogue, parody, contest arena, or allegory. According to Barthes, this space is the reader. Barthes suggests that a person in a photograph taken in the past can be considered to be present here, in the present before us. He, according to Barthes, is already in the photograph, that is, he will still exist as befits a living thing. In the world of art, representations of the past through images or images can be seen in various ways and have various meanings. Objects or past events can be used as imaginary references, where an art can identify itself dialogically. In this case, the past functions as what Derrida calls markers of signifieds, or endless traces of markers, because we will never arrive at a final signified, namely meaning or truth. Taking elements from the past in whatever way and combination means taking at the same time the cultural codes that lie behind past reality. The main principle of myth is turn history into nature, or turn history into nature. It is understandable why the consumers of myths are not aware of the hidden motivation and interest manifested in myth. They tend to view myths as something natural. The process of forming this myth then gives rise to ideology. If it is continuously established and frozen and spreads to one convention area, then myth develops into an ideology. The process of forming an ideology occurs in the same way as the process of forming a myth, only accompanied by a power of meaning that goes beyond individual, a supra-individual power.
Thank you, Lively. The next will be explained by Sabita. Sabita, take your time.
Okay, let me continue. Barthes' main goal in a book entitled Images Music is not to trace where the text came from or his historical criticism or even how the text was made or structural analysis, but to see the text as something unfinished, how it folded, how it blooms through whatever codes the text sounds. Barthes, 2010. Signs are messages generated by sound images. If this is related to a musical ensemble, then the sound image marks are played by the musician where the music has its own concepts that can be understood and used by the performance themselves. The songs or melody produced by the instrument carrying the melody is on collection of several rhythmic tones produced by percussion instruments so that they form a musical piece and will develop into a composition. Next slide, please. Barthes argues that instead of trying to change the language about music, it is better to change the musical object itself, let it present itself into discourse, change perception and intellect towards it, or change the lens used to connect language and music. It is these changes that we want to emphasize, not by examining music as a whole, but examining one part of vocal music or light or melody, which is the true pace or channel for how language and sound intertwine. We hasten to name that panades that we wish to examine so that we can be sure the empathication of ethos can be liquidated and in doing so the adjective image does not hold. The elementary sound particle in sound if the last this term means the space or channel where language and music consist. Barthes, 2010. The basic sound particles are the body when the sound is sung, the hand when the sound is written, and the tongue when the sound is spoken. When I catch or feel that basic sound particles in a piece of music and then try to theorize it, or marrying the text with the work, it means that I am complying a new evaluation scheme, which of course will be individual, or I am determined to listen to the contact between me and the body or a man or a woman who is singing or playing music, and the contact is erotic, but in no way subjective or not a psychological subject that is in me listening to music. Climactic pleasure is expanded not to strengthen the expression. This physiological subject, but can surprise it. If we could refine or create a certain aesthetic of musical enjoyment, then we would undoubtedly be able to patch back the tonal rift caused by modernity. Barthes, 2010. Next slide. Okay. One example of Roland Barthes' semiotic is his analysis of a magazine advertisement for a pasta sauce. Barthes' approach to semiotic involves analyzing sign and symbols in cultural text to uncover the meaning and values they communicate. In the pasta sauce advertisement, Barthes identifies a number of signs and symbols that convey cultural messages about gender, class, and taste. For example, Bartles notes that the image of a woman serving pasta to her husband suggests traditional gender role and domesticity. The woman's smile and posture convey a sense of satisfaction and fulfillment in her role as a homemaker. The brand name and packaging of the pasta sauce, which includes images of tomatoes and herbs, suggests a natural, wholesome product that is associated with a particular class and lifestyle. Bartlett also examines the language used in advertisement. Nothing how words like authentic and traditional are used to create a sense of cultural legitimacy and authenticity. He also identified the use of color and texture in advertisement, which convey sensory and emotional qualities associated with the taste of the pasta sauce. Through his analysis, Bartlett demonstrates how cultural texts like advertisements are constructed through a complex system of a sign and symbol that convey meanings and values to their audience.
Thank you, Sabita. The next will be explained by Farel. Farel, take your time, please.
Example of Roland Barthes' semiotic in daily life. Roland Barthes' semiotic is the study of sign and symbol and their meanings in society. It can be applied to daily life in a variety of ways, from interpreting advertising message to analyzing cultural practices. One example of Barthes' semiotic in daily life is in the way that we interpret clothing style. Different clothing style can be seen as sign or symbol that convey meaning and values. A person wearing a suit and tie may be interpreted as professional, while someone wearing ripped jeans and a t-shirt may be seen casual and laid back. Another example of Barthes' semiotic in daily life is in the interpretation of advertising message. Advertisement often use symbol and imagery to convey message about a product or service. A car commercial may use images of an open road and freedom to convey the idea that the car provides a sense of adventure and independence. Finally, Barthes' semiotic can be applied to the analysis of cultural practice, such as a holiday tradition. The use of Christmas tree and the exchange of gifts during the holiday season can be seen as symbolic practices that convey meaning about family, generosity, and tradition. Overall, Barthes' semiotic provides a useful framework for understanding the meanings and values that are communicated through sign and symbol in daily life. And the summary is Roland Barthes is a semiotic figure who states that semiotic is the goal of interpreting various segment systems such as picture, gesture, music, dance, and various objects that unite in segment system. Barthes argues that we can talk about two systems of meaning, which are denotation and connotation. Denotation is the level of descriptive and literal meaning and is virtually honored by all members of culture when humans interpret something with an official meaning as is scientifically inherent in the segment, then he has been immersed in mind. Connotation is a term used by Roland Barthes to describe the interaction that occurs when the segment meets the feelings and values of the user through their culture.
All right, that's all about our material. Thank you for attention and time. Goodbye.